President Trump called the FBI search and seizure of his personal attorney, Michael Cohen, an attack on the country. Fired FBI Chief James Comey responded this morning saying this.
Either doesn't know or doesn't care what the rule of law looks like. Nobody broke into anybody's office. It doesn't happen. The FBI gets a search warrant from a federal judge and conducts itself professionally, completely, and politely by the accounts of the people involved. So it's a total distortion of the way things work.
Let's discuss with CNN legal analyst and defense attorney Mark Geragos. It's great to see you, Counselor.
Good to
now,
see you
look,
too.
both of us know that what James Comey just said is not always true, right? The government can go sideways on things. They can show prejudice. Guys like you have made a career out of fighting against the due process of law and how it goes. But in this instance, how this was carried out and what we saw from Judge Kimba Wood yesterday, do you believe this is an attack on our country?
No, I wouldn't characterize it as an attack on the country. But remember, this is an astonishing place that we are. We are at a place where the Department of Justice, which is already under siege, has approved a search warrant, going and getting a search warrant on the personal attorney of the President of the United States. I can't think of anything that's comparable. I mean, I've been saying all along that this whole investigation is reminiscent, it's deja vu all over again, of Whitewater, but this is next level. And this is, I can understand why the president is so upset, because he's used to fighting. And having represented guys like this, titans of industry or whatever you want to characterize them, they're used to going to the mat. But they don't understand. The FBI, Department of Justice, these are the guys with badges and guns. And that's a different calculation than you normally have to do if you're just going toe-to-toe with civil lawyers.
Well, you saw the arguments yesterday, and I thought, and you tell me, I've come to you for advice for a long time, that Kimba Wood was very fair in how
Absolutely.
she dealt with this, but also clearly reflected that she wasn't out of her depth. This is something that happens occasionally, even when privileged communications are involved. They have mechanisms, they have perspective on it, they have precedents. Was my read right?
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is the federal system, I think, is flawed when it comes to this specific area. If this were in California and it was a state court warrant, they would go in, they would have a special master already. You would have had a hearing if you're the law office, and you would have gone into a court, you'd do what's called a privilege log, you'd list, and you'd say, this is my client, this is what this reflects, and this is what this pertains to. The federal system doesn't really have that, but she was giving it a lot of thought. She was talking about a taint team, which is, we always call it the dirty team versus the clean, erecting a wall and making sure that they don't communicate. She gave thought to a lot of thought and depth to all of those issues.
And the prosecutors made an interesting case. They said, we're not going after him as a lawyer. We're going after him as a businessman. And by the way, I don't know why the president's lawyer is here, because we didn't find any communications between Cohen and Trump as a private citizen, so we don't understand what their concern was. They were interesting arguments.
Yes, that reminded me, there was a case years ago in California where a judge ruled that there was no spousal privilege because it was a bad marriage. And just because this may be a lawyer who's doing business stuff, I don't think that gives you a free pass. That's where I would disagree with the government, and I would push back and say, I don't care what you say. The fact that you're looking at the work he's doing already proves our point that you shouldn't be in there, that a special master should be sifting through and saying those kinds of things.
Is Cohen, is the president right to be nervous or to be anxious about what's going on here with Cohen?
Absolutely. I mean, I have seen the most loyal lieutenants to clients flip when they get into this situation. I mean, this is fraught with danger. Having done this for going on almost 4 decades, I can tell you that when you're faced with the prospect of somebody who's just executed search warrants at your home and your office, and you're not so sure that a president could pardon your way out of this, somebody's going to make some calculation. Do I do what's best for me, or do I do what's best for him? And I think in this case, the president should be nervous.
Well, Cohen, if nothing else, has been 100% consistent and clear in his desire to defend President Trump to the death.
Which are usually famous last words of guys right before they flip.
Do you believe that, although he could pardon him, I mean, all this is federal.
But the problem is he can't pardon his way out of this, because he can pardon him federally. This is part of the chess move. They've already brought in the state attorney general in New York. So you can pardon him for the federal aspect of this, but not.
But we'd have to see the New York AG actually do something. That hasn't happened yet.
We're not going to go there for a variety of reasons.
Now, let me ask you something else. Let me have you on this, because this threw me. I actually had to go back and do some Googling on this yesterday. They say you have to expose your clients. Tell us their names. Kimba Wood says, if you're going to say that this is privilege, we have to know. They don't want to give one of the names. She gets into it with this lawyer, says, you're going to tell me the name. You can pass it on a piece of paper if you want, or you can tell me. He opts to say in open court, it's Sean Hannity. All right? All the media goes, why? Because he is a hero or villain, depending on where you are politically. So he then starts talking about it. And he seems to go both ways. I've never used him for anything. There's no third party. Maybe I gave him $10. I thought I had a privilege. Is he his client or not?
You have a duty as a lawyer. When somebody consults with you for legal advice, you have an absolute duty to assert the privilege. The privilege is held by Sean Hannity. It's not held by Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen can't waive that. Michael Cohen, frankly, should not have even sent it over. The lawyer shouldn't have sent it over on a piece of paper. He should have just said, I'm asserting the attorney-client privilege, do what you will, but it's up to Sean Hannity to waive it or not.
So you believe he's a client?
I think when you go and seek advice under most state interpretations, that establishes an attorney-client privilege. It's not yours to waive.
To be continued. We will need you as a Virgil throughout this process. Good to see you as always, counsel.
Too.
Allison.
Okay, Chris.